grief is universal and that everybody will experience grief in their lifetime. If you've loved someone and lost someone, you are 100% guaranteed to experience grief. But grief is also extremely unique because nobody will lose the same person that you did.
Welcome to Better Together podcast, produced and directed by Our Hospice of South Central Indiana. We're learning to make every moment count when it matters most. We share real stories about hospice, palliative, and personal care provided in 22 counties all over South Central Indiana. I am your host and president, Steph Cain. Today we are joined by Paula Neibert, who leads the bereavement program with Our Hospice.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, why do you think it is that the holidays tend to make grief feel heavier?
So I think there's a combination of factors. I think the holidays make grief feel heavier because it's this very concentrated period of time that is traditionally defined by our memories, our roles, and traditions. And these things are, across the board, fundamentally altered by loss.
So you said a couple of key words that I'm hearing: tradition. And traditions can be, people, we want it, right? We want to keep the traditions. And, I have adult kids and they show up and they still want to do the things, right?
Yes.
And yet it can feel really hard, and there's pressure to feel joyful. Would you agree? Do you experience that? Or does the group you have maybe talk about that?
Yeah. So I think that the pressure and the expectations of the holidays can just complicate the grief process because it can add a layer of secondary suffering. So we're experiencing the primary loss, which is the grief of the person we've lost, and that can be deep and painful. We're missing someone. But then the secondary loss that we're feeling is the story that we tell ourselves about it. So we often will say, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm ruining it for everyone else if I'm crying. Might ask ourselves, what's wrong with me? And I think we feel this cultural pressure to make holiday fun and to make holiday cheerful. And so we have this expectation that we have a responsibility to perform into that. And that, and that's difficult.
I was talking to a team member yesterday. We had a holiday lunch, and I said, how are you doing this holiday in the space of, I know you lost your mom, but it's been a couple of years. And she said, I think this year is even harder than the first year. And I wonder about that. Is it because we have a little bit of fog in the first year and we're just trying to navigate?
You should be however you're feeling in the moment. One of the things that when I'm meeting individually with a person or in our group setting, I always start by saying that grief is universal and that everybody will experience grief in their lifetime. If you've loved someone and lost someone, you are 100% guaranteed to experience grief. But grief is also extremely unique because nobody will lose the same person that you did. You had a very unique relationship. So the easiest example of explaining this is if you have 3 siblings who have all lost the same parent, they've all lost the same person, but each of those relationships were unique and different. And so each of the siblings might be experiencing grief in a very different way. And all of those ways are valid.
In my position here at Our Hospice, there are times where I may be walking through our inpatient facility and I'll meet different family members, right? And I can see that.
Yeah.
And we have, and when I say we, I'll just speak for myself. Sometimes I have a term where I'll say, wow, the son is really experiencing grief kind of coming out sideways. Maybe he's really angry. He wants answers about this, that, and the other thing. But the full-time caregiver has been maybe his sister, and she's already handled that, but he's just beginning. So it's really, you can see that, you can have compassion, you can kind of understand them where they're at.
I think another thing that makes the holidays difficult is that, holidays are steeped in family traditions. And because, one family might have lost the same family member, they each had a unique relationship with them. So the person who lost their spouse, has lost a very different person in their life than the person who lost an uncle, than the person who lost a father, than the person who lost a brother. None of the losses are more or less, but they are different. And so navigating, a family Christmas or a family Hanukkah celebration is going to be difficult because you are trying to balance the needs of all of those different people and who they've lost. So,
you said something a little earlier in the conversation that's powerful, in that you were saying grief is universal, kind of like music, right? And yes, we lose people and we lose dreams and maybe a future hope that we had, but it's universal because we all feel it at some point, right? And so it can bring people together. And I'm just curious, in the bereavement group, like what happens in a grief support group? Is there bonding?
The feedback that most of the participants share is that it being a part of a group where, other people are experiencing loss and navigating that loss is helpful because it helps to normalize their experience. One of the things that pops up so very often, especially when somebody is, first addressing their grief needs, is they will say, everything feels out of control. I don't feel like I have control over anything. And I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I'm not myself. There are very real psychological and physiological reasons why a person experiences that during grief.
Almost a fight or flight.
Yes.
You can't make a decision. You can't function quite.
Yeah. And it's very disconcerting for people who are experiencing that. The energy that would be going towards our executive functions, decision-making, organization, planning, that energy during grief is going to survival mode. So we're operating completely differently than we were prior to our, experiencing our loss.
I actually have a really personal experience with that. Around Thanksgiving 27 years ago, we lost a little baby daughter. I'll tell you, even today, after 27 years, Shannon, it'll be busy and I have so much joy and hope, but coming through all of that kind of grief, planning our family at that time and, all of the hopes and dreams. And of course, just missing that child. I have 2 other children as well. And we talk about it. It's very interesting around November, around Thanksgiving when this happens. My body somehow is like, I'm feeling a little heavy, a little tired and everything. I was like, that's the anniversary. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for people experiencing grief or going through their first significant loss in their life, being a part of a group helps normalize what they're experiencing, because as a culture, we do not do a good job about
so true
talking about death and dying and talking about and supporting the grieving person. So, really a lot of people just have no basis from which to operate when experiencing grief for the first time.
So, Paula, I have a question for you on a personal note. I remember feeling in a season of grief guilty if a few days went past and I forgot to think about Shannon. I was laughing and I was coming out of a season of heavy grief and starting to celebrate and have hope and light, but I still felt really guilty about it. How can you encourage us? Okay.
So I think that's a very common feeling that a lot of people experience is, and part of the reason you might have been feeling guilty is that we really struggle with holding 2 things to be true at once. So during the holidays and really any time with grief, a person is often carrying differing emotions. So you are experiencing sadness, but you're also experiencing joy. And having the joy doesn't make the grief go away. It's still present, but in that moment, the joy is bubbling up, and that's a beautiful thing. It's really important to allow yourself to have those experiences of joy and happiness.
And know that's normal.
Very normal.
Let's talk a little bit about the way forward. Self-care. What are some of the things, some of the strategies that we can encourage listeners to think about, to know you're not alone in it? This is normal, how you're feeling. It's maybe very personal and unique to you. And what are some of the things that folks can do to help navigate the seasons of the holidays and also maybe the grief that's coming back or new to them?
I have two very practical acts of kindness that people can give to themselves during the holidays, because the holidays do hold some specific challenges. And the first one I say is to give yourself an out or have an exit strategy. So if you're going to an event, you might tell the host, "Thank you for the invite. I should be able to stay until about 8 o'clock. Then if 8 o'clock comes around and you find that you're enjoying yourself and you want to stay longer, you've built in the flexibility to do so. At the same time, if you find that being at the event is too overwhelming, you've also given yourself an opportunity to simply say, "I'm unable to stay as long as I had planned. I have to be going now. Thanks for having me." Before going to an event, decide on your exit cue or your exit line. The cue could be an emotional sign, like you might feel, your chest tightening. You might feel a little hot and sweaty. It might be a social trigger. Maybe you know that when Uncle Joe starts telling stories, that's
it for you.
That's it. You're out.
Okay.
And, you can simply respond by saying, "It's been so wonderful to see everyone. I'm going to head out now. Thanks for having me." So having a plan in place helps you to regain some sense of safety and control, because that's one of the big pieces of grief is that a lot of people will say that everything feels out of control. And for most people, you're entering grief not because you chose to, right? It was out of your control. And so being able to reclaim some of that control is very helpful and empowering for people. The second act of kindness I suggest is giving yourself a permission slip. I give myself permission to buy the pre-made meal instead of cooking. To skip cards this year.
That's right.
To not send thank you cards right away or at all. Most people will understand. That's a direct counter to whatever inner critic you might be having. I should be doing this. And that protects your energy by lowering the standard to a survivable one, especially the first year.
And, when it comes to tradition, maybe there's some new ones.
Yes. When we're talking about traditions, it's not just the person we're missing the world that they helped to create, right? And we're missing the person that we were in that world. You might be missing the role of being a child who was taken care of by a parent or being a partner who planned the tree lighting ceremony. And so when that person is gone, the architecture of your holidays can collapse. So you're not just grieving their presence, you're grieving the future you thought you had with them.
Tell me a little bit about why are traditions important, and then do we keep them? Do we pitch them? What do you think?
So the first step is to reframe what your tradition is for. So we often think of traditions as fixed and sacred obligations, but at their core, traditions are simply meaningful, repeated actions. The purpose of a tradition is to bring connection and significance. So if the old way of doing something only brings pain right now, it's lost its purpose. And so changing it shouldn't be seen as disrespectful, and it's not about forgetting your loved one. It's really an act of honesty and survival.
So moving the meal from maybe the person that you lost, maybe the loved one's home, to your home is going to be really different. Yeah.
So I think it's important to ask, what is at the heart of this tradition for me? Was it togetherness? Was it honoring your heritage together? Was it creating joy? And once you figure out what that core value was, you can find a new way to honor that fits your current capacity at the moment.
And your current reality.
Yes. So if the big traditional family dinner is too much, maybe the heart, the core value was sharing a meal together.
That's right.
So maybe this year you order pizza and sit on the couch together and share a meal. If decorating the whole tree just seems impossible, maybe the heart of that tradition was bringing light.
Right.
right? So maybe this year you decide to light a single candle together. So you're not erasing the past. You're beginning to build a bridge from the love and relationship that you had with the person and the memories that you held to your current reality. So a new ritual or tradition can be a way of saying, I'm choosing to carry our love forward into a life that I have to learn to live without you.
This is Better Together, a podcast dedicated to making every moment count. Thank you for listening. Please like us and share this episode on your social media channels. If you have a question or you'd like to learn more about a specific topic, you can find us at www.ourhospice.org or call 812-314-8083. Until next time, remember that we are better together, making every single moment count.